And here's an exercise that I would do as I was touring the country, and I would ask people to close their eyes, and I said, I want you to hear the sound of newsprint. And then everybody went, yeah, okay. I want you to hear the sound of a paperback novel. I want you to hear the difference in the sound of magazine paper or the sound of a business card. My point is, we have, in fact, memorized those sounds.
What's up, everyone? It's Eric Vessels with Taktiful. Welcome back to another episode of Taktiful Tuesdays. I believe this is episode 13. We're going to call it the lucky episode because, we're just going to keep it positive on Taktiful Tuesdays. That's how I roll. I'm really super happy to have my good friend Daniel Dejan with me for this episode. Daniel is the principal and creative director of Dejan Associates and co-founder of MarketWise Academy, platform dedicated to educating professionals on the intersection of print and digital marketing. A graphic arts industry veteran, kind of an OG, over 4 decades of experience, an expert in print production, paper selection, multi-channel marketing. He's a passionate advocate for the power of print, sustainability, and the integration of traditional and digital media to create impactful brand experiences. Also is a very passionate advocate of digital embellishment and haptics and the power of touch. Something passionate. Bring the passion.
That's
Ladies, Daniel, welcome to the podcast. Welcome, buddy.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm really good. As everyone can tell, I've been moving, so I'm making some progress. I've got the books packed, but I got to be out of here in a couple days, so I've got a lot of stuff to do. That's beside the point.
Okay, well, it's been great. Have a great day. Good packing to you. Bye. That's how I would be if I was packing.
You've got over 4 decades in the graphic arts industry.
Yeah.
How have you seen print evolve alongside digital media? And what role does print still play in integrated marketing strategies?
Well, the interesting thing, the choice of words, it is not so much that it has evolved alongside digital.
Okay.
Digital came in, like a hurricane.
Disrupted.
And one of the things we all know, of course, is that technology is the primary focus. We're always looking for, and quite frankly, it's been one of the challenges in our industry because there was a time when you bought a press and, you had a long life on it before you really had to think about a new press. Now you buy a press and within a year they've got updates and then they've got add-ons and so part of that is, and I'm sort of leading to very difficult for printers to make a profit because of just the technology coming at them and the desire to have the latest technology. And the other part of it is, I think, is the print industry's primal error, which is printers want that new technology. They do everything they can to afford that new technology. They get the new technology, but they don't charge the client for it.
Interesting.
They use it as a marketing tool. Hey, I now have cold foil, or now I can do sleeking, but they're not charging them for the new technology, which is a shame because I shouldn't say it's a shame because as a print buyer, I benefited from it for 30 years. But the other part of it is that it changed the trajectory of the print industry and design. I am old school. I am keyline paste up. I am boards, but I also was immensely privileged in my career. I did some of the first jobs on a Cytex, drum scanning. I was actually a part of and being paid by magazines and clients to be surfing at the front of the wave. What's going on? I mean, I did laser die cutting. I had the first laser die cut business card. I mean, I could rattle stuff off like this because, and again, I'm the first one to admit I was the right person, right time, very privileged.
Right.
I'd been writing for a magazine called Step by Step Graphics since its inception. In fact, I had the center spread, which was always the new technology or new processes, And so every month I had to come up with something. So I was out there, and fortunately, if I pick up the phone and call, Beatrice and say, hey, I want to do an article on the Cytex, they'd be like, sure, come on over. And there I was. Or the first, I had the privilege of printing on one of the first 6 color presses in Chicago. I'm a G7 expert, so from the very beginning, I started doing expanded gamut, extreme gamut, you name it. We are a country that is, or think of itself as technology forward.
Right.
And that's wonderful. The interesting thing about it is I'm an academic in every, sense of the word. I'm an academic. I'm constantly reading, I'm constantly going to shows. One time I was always on the road, and if I was anywhere near somebody who had a new piece of equipment, I was there.
Nice.
Yeah, it was. And then my job was then to report it, and to bring it to the market. And the interesting part is, again, for the last 20 years, maybe more, I have always been very, very concerned by printers' profitability. They're working really hard, they're expanding, mergers and acquisitions. I mean, we had all this, but the larger question was, were they making money?
Right.
Were they able to pay off that equipment? Some printers were really wise, and rather than taking an extended note on the purchase, they wanted that note as short as possible because they knew, they were going to have to turn it over. And quite frankly, yeah, if we look at historically what's been happening in our industry, I would say there was a time where you had something new, really cool, new, every 2 or 3 years, maybe. Now, quite frankly, you have to have something new for the next show.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I think that technological churn. I mean, as you were talking, I was just thinking a lot of it is just a macro trend in terms of the technological advancement, not necessarily just with the printing industry, but like if you think back to 50s and 60s, even as
Yeah.
close as that,
Yeah.
like technology didn't change at the rate. The rate of technological change just keeps. I mean, and it's bonkers now with AI. Who knows? If
Well,
that. I mean, I don't see that rate of change ever slowing down. So I think the
no,
question is,
no, the market won't allow it.
right?
First of all, the one of the things we have to start accepting, well, I think we have, but many of us, at one time, virtually all of the printers were in fact family owned.
Right.
Now they all belong to a corporation, or a larger body. And the fact of it is, at one time, our industry was motivated by CMOs. I mean, the chief marketing officers really were, I need a new idea. I need a new now, and probably since, quite frankly, the whole trend started after 2008 to 2011 when everybody lost so much money. In fact, it seems like the businesses were turned over to the CFOs.
Right.
And the financial people became the drivers. Financial people have I think, a very, very different point of view than marketing people.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
And
it's spreadsheets and numbers, right? Like it's
well, yeah, it's the numbers, but also it's the demand for return on investment.
right.
Where marketing people, I'm not saying that they're not concerned about that, but they have larger concerns. They're much more concerned about building and maintaining the brand.
Well, it's the old division between creatives and analytics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. That just goes without saying.
But because of our conversation, it has to be said. The fact is, what was one of the biggest changes was the fact that you had a seismic change in the way that we looked at our industry. Up until the recessions, the 2 major recessions in '08 and '11, we were a marketing-driven industry. And yes, we wanted new equipment, or we wanted new techniques or new processes. Most of it, the beauty of it, I've had the real pleasure of working with so many universities that were coming up with dramatic stuff. Cal Poly, Ryerson. They were all doing just such amazing work. And the interesting thing of it is they weren't asking what's the return on investment. They were like, oh my God, you got to see this new, it's so cool. Wait till you see when it's applied. And we were all really stoked about that. And then somebody in the back went, how are we going to pay for it? And it was like, God, what a bummer. That was a chill. So I think that was one of the first major changes. That just as a sidebar, I did my apprenticeship in a hot type shop. So that's how far back I go, you know. So the fact of it is, I've seen all of those changes, and I was a kid when that happened. But my point was that we were more back then process driven rather than return on investment driven.
Right.
And that's tough. I mean, that's a tough societal change, zeitgeist change, where suddenly we're asked to incorporate the latest, newest, whatever in our job, and then 6 months later we're asked to do it again.
Do it again. Do it
And
again.
do it again because there's always something new, and there will always be something as long as we have generations going into schools or into situations where part of their curricula is to look at new technology and figure out how to, build it up to a level that can be taken out into the market so that it can make money.
It's the toddler paradox. Do it again. Do it again. Again.
Again. Oh, please go to sleep.
So let's get touchy-feely. A lot of people know that we at Taktiful, we have a division that I run called Tactical, which is really focused on education on both OEMs and printers. One of the things that we do is an 8-week digital embellishment bootcamp, which is custom to whoever that client is, whoever that printer is. And you are one of our subject matter experts for that. Thank you for being a part of the team.
I'm privileged.
We recently did a boot camp and you focused on the power of touch. And that's something that's obviously, we evangelize that all the time within digital embellishments and how that creates additional value for print. Talk to me a little bit about, or talk to us a little bit about that power of touch dynamic. Why is that starting? Is it technology that's bringing that to the forefront? What is making that start to be a really big topic of discussion in the printing industry?
I think if you don't mind, I'd take a couple of steps backwards.
Sure.
As we say in French, I won't say it in French, but I'm happy to. You need to take a couple of steps backward in order to leap further.
Right.
The original research was really done in 2000.
Okay.
And the reason that's so important is, as we were talking about the inclusion of new technology, I still have my original Mac Plus. And I was a part of the group in Chicago called The Rest of Us. That was the first Mac users group. And what were we dealing with? I mean, like most of us, the early days was like fonts, page creation, things like that. As that sped up, and it was more part of our larger community, print and design community, scientists wanted to better understand, so what's the difference between reading ink on paper versus reading on a monitor? Okay? And it's a core question because we want to know, because I think we also wanted to know, was there one that was more efficient or one that had more potency? So long story short, neuroscience, this has now been embraced by the neuroscientific research community. And they did, as you can imagine, we also, the technology, brain scanning had just caught up, fMRI, and I always do this, it's the shower cap with all the wires. They could finally map the brain. Very early days, but they could map it. What they did is they asked a group to read ink on paper, and they had the same group read the same text on a monitor and map the brain. And what they found out was there was far more activity when we read ink on paper. So they did the analysis, and what they came to realize is when we read on a monitor, we are only stimulating one or two senses. Two, if it's got music in the background or some sort of sound so that you include the audio. But when we read ink on paper, now keep in mind we've been doing this for such a long time that it's so in the background for us. It's not, we're not saying, oh my gosh, I can smell the paper.
Yeah, it's
But
deep
the
rooted.
point is just that,
Yeah.
was the fact that we were stimulating four senses, and what they found out was by stimulating the four senses, first of all, it made us slow down. We were taking in every word. We weren't skimming as we've been trained to do on a monitor. Also, all four senses were being stimulated. So obviously visual, the sound of paper as it's being turned, shuffled, etc. A quick sidebar. I don't know how many of you remember when the ebook first came out and they were trying to simulate, if you will, you
Turning a
know,
page.
and it made that ridiculous whooshing sound.
Yeah.
And we're like, that's not what paper sounds like, because we know the difference. And here's an exercise that I would do as I was touring the country, and I would ask people to close their eyes, and I said, I want you to hear the sound of newsprint. And then everybody went, yeah, okay. I want you to hear the sound of a paperback novel. I want you to hear the difference in the sound of magazine paper or the sound of a business card. My point is, we have, in fact, memorized those sounds. They are a part of a perfect example. And I used to do this. I would have people close their eyes, and then I would take a business card and I would flick it, and I would say, paperback novel. And everybody went, no, it sounds too stiff. So the fact is, it is a part of the sensory and the smell of paper. I would do an exercise where I would say, close your eyes and in your mind, walk into a library, or walk into a bookstore or walk into a magazine stand.
Yeah.
The truth of it is, oh, and by the way, the smell of paper, the smell of paper, the sound of paper, how we see it. So that haptic experience that we take for granted because we've been doing it since we've been children was superseded then by an alternative, which was reading on a monitor.
So it occurs to me, Daniel, that the digital embellishment craze, right, like raised varnish,
Yeah,
foil, it occurs to me that we're taking something that's always been haptic with print and sort of supercharging it.
well,
When I think of foil, if you think of foil in that way,
yeah,
foil reflects the light in such a way that that's your visual sense, right?
yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's enhancing that particular sense. And then if you touch it and it's
Yeah,
got raised varnish, it's enhancing the tactile sense.
exactly.
So digital embellishment really is about enhancing those sensory things
It
that
is.
already exist with printed output.
And again, I was very, very privileged that I had a client base early on that could afford doing things like foil stamping, die cutting, embossing, debossing, and we were doing it, quite frankly, at the beginning on a letterpress, and then
Yep.
ultimately the technology moved on. I want to suggest to you, like most technologies, you have this rise or this growth that really captures, the market,
Mm-hmm.
and then it sort of gets saturated, and everybody's doing it.
Sure.
And typically, because of the culture that we're in, here you've got some sort of embellishment that's doing really great, but then all of a sudden color, we can use neon colors, and so all of a sudden the embellishment becomes the neon color, not the foil stamp or the whatever is new.
Well, I think you make a great point, and this is something that we cover in the boot camps relative to value selling digital embellishments too, is we're on that upward curve,
Mm-hmm.
right? So to your point, why get new technology and just have it be a differentiator when it can be an actual ROI?
Absolutely.
When you can actually sell the value, there's a perceived value of this stuff that I think people, now at some point, will it become commoditized? I think, like you said, market forces will do that. Think back to digital printing.
It has.
When digital printing first came out and we could do variable data, you could charge
everything.
You could charge a lot of money for that. But now variable data is like table stakes.
Right.
And eventually digital embellishments might be that. But I think what I would point out is the digital embellishment part of it is making the things that you were talking about easier, right? That weren't
and affordable.
Because now we can now even do variable data digital embellishment.
Yes, I have a wonderful example. In fact, I just saw, I don't know if you had seen it or not, but the Taylor Swift tickets.
Yes. Did you post on that? I think
I haven't, but
I saw it on LinkedIn, I think.
yeah, exactly. And the Swift tickets, and they're beautiful. I mean, the printing is gorgeous, as you can imagine. But
Sure.
what really caught our eye was down at the very bottom, the seat, the row, etc., at the very bottom to identify your ticket to you was done in a variable metallic that was, and
So good.
it was sequential, you know?
Sure.
And man, that blew me away. It
Yeah.
really did, because all of a sudden it was sort of like one of those, oh my God. What I wanted to say though is, and it would be worth another conversation at another time, but the fact of it is, when we talk about that rise of popularity being overshadowed by a new rise of popularity, that's marketing. You know, we're seeing technology at the very root, people really figuring out how to make that technology work, but
Right.
then more so, then it comes into the market and then it becomes a marketing technique to draw in clients or to draw in a new revenue stream.
Absolutely. It's a differentiator, right? And
Absolutely.
that's what we're teaching people now in our boot camps is like if you've got this digital embellishment technology, even if it's just fifth and sixth color or if it's
Yeah.
varnish, foil, you've got a differentiator. Well, Daniel, I'm always amazed when I look down and 20 minutes has gone by because it never.
Whoosh.
And when I have people like you on, it's so interesting to talk and talk and talk. I'm gonna leave everyone with my favorite question towards the end. What is your favorite thing to do when you're not working? Yeah,
I'm teasing.
you just
No, I'm an artist first and foremost. So I do a lot of different art forms, sculpt, and a lot of paper. I love origami. I love paper collage, things like that.
That does
Also,
not surprise me. An old paper guy's doing collage
well,
and
you know,
origami.
one of the things I've been fortunate to be able to do is I've had so many friends in the paper industry, coming from the paper industry, but at the merchant level of being able to go into their sample department and being able to cherry pick really choice sheets of paper in the same way that I love going into an Oriental market where they have paper, you know, Oriental handmade papers. I'll buy that stuff till the cows come home. And then I use it for a variety of purposes, you know. But I'm an artist first. I live in a world that is visually stimulating. I mean, the haptics, again, as we were talking about, I love to have my senses stimulated. You know, visually, whether it's sound, I always have music on, always, 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 every kind of genre you can imagine.
What are you listening to right now? What's your go-to right now?
Well, right now, I've got to tell you, there was the most superb documentary on called Sly Lives on Sylvester, Sly and the Family Stone.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were playing all the music, and it made me sort of, you know, go into the time machine back.
Oh,
And I decided, well, damn, I want to relive that era. It's one of my favorite musical eras. But yeah, so now I'm listening to all that late 60s, early 70s, early funk, because I am a funkadelic.
that's
Okay,
that's
I come down from the mothership, and yeah, I just love that era. And part of it is also because we used to play a lot of that in the background. Anything with a beat keeps you sort of working, you know?
dang, dang.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Absolutely. So yeah, that's one of my, so I love and I love music.
That's outstanding. I think it's, you mentioned this, but I think it's so fascinating how music that you've known for a long time can transport you to a place.
Sure.
And I've even had sensory experiences where, like, I'm listening to a particular song and I can smell the venue of the concert.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I find it a little unsettling, to be honest.
But sometimes some of those concerts, I mean,
It's just like,
if you were following the Dead, that was not a great smell,
well,
okay?
for me, it's mostly sweaty mosh pits, right? Because
Yeah, exactly. Sure.
that was my jam back in my 20s, was getting in a mosh pit and twisting my ankle like a freaking.
Oh, God. But
Daniel, it's been a pure joy. It always is when we speak. Thank you for being on the podcast and talking a little bit about all of the things that you know. Look forward to doing more boot camps and educating more folks. And
it'd be a pleasure.
yeah, thanks for being on.
All right. Stay well, brother.
See you, man.
Respect.